Welcome to Care to Elaborate with Taylor and Travarus. We are here. This is our first episode. We've been building on this for so long. We've been so ready to bring this stuff to y'all. This is a podcast for folks who are in the tech space or tech adjacent roles, any kind of corporate environment where you feel like you needed somebody to talk to and you don't have a friend. This is like a live weekly ERG meeting, right? So if you need black friends to talk to about what it's like to be in these corporate spaces, we are here. My name is Travarus. I'm one of your co-hosts, and we also have Taylor.
Hey, y'all. Yes, if you are in the need for a friend, we will be your best friends. Over the next couple of episodes, we will dive into a lot of things that you all need to know and that you all probably want to hear.
And I think that whenever you listen to a podcast for the first time, whether you know us or you don't, you want to discover, why did they decide to start a podcast? So this episode is going to be about the origin, why we felt like our voice is unique enough to want to have one, but also, you know, how we got together to decide like we need to start something that we wanted to have be publicized. So I can start first. Yeah. And I would say that when you're in this space, Becca, let me address one more other thing that's very distinct about our podcast. I'm a millennial.
Very much so.
I'm a cool millennial.
You are. That's valid.
Right?
You are cool. I will give you that.
Not to say that millennials aren't cool, but I'm a millennial and Taylor is.
Very much so Gen Z.
For sure, Gen
For
Z.
sure. Born in 2001. It feels so long. Y'all be feeling old.
I mean,
anyway.
You be feeling old?
Yeah.
No,
because
don't do that.
Have you not seen those TikToks where they be like, what do you consider old? And it be like people that are born in like 200007 and they be like 2002.
Those are children.
Well, that's what they be. Those people are like almost 18 now.
That's wild.
Yeah. My sister was born in 2005. She's 19.
You know what I was doing in 2005? I became a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated in 2005.
Probably doing a whole bunch of stuff you ain't had no business.
I had business.
Back to the...
So, I'm a millennial. Taylor is Gen Z. And I think that one thing that you always see on the internet is bickering between the two. And what we found is that we really get along with most things. Maybe because I have a bit of a younger age and she has more of an older soul. But that's the origin of how we began to chat. So we work at the same place, and we decided, to make sure we had like weekly or bi-weekly chats because I wanted to ensure that she was taken care of, not that she needed any guidance.
I do.
and she wanted to continue to chat. So I was like, all right. We had an event at work, and the students were tasked with having questions for a Q&A. Taylor was a guest. I was the host. And after 10 minutes, the questions dried up. So I began to get my podcaster bag and begin to bring up questions, and she was answering on the fly. Now, this wasn't our first acquaintance.
I had no type of notes, y'all. Just going straight off the dome.
Right, all vibes.
Straight off the dome.
Straight vibes, right? And the questions were answered lovely, and I was like, this is obviously, we've been meeting and we've known each other for some time. So I hit her on the side, like, I think we should start a podcast. Just really like no guidance. Just I think we should start a podcast, and then we started to build from there.
And we're here.
How would you feel? What do you think the origin was for us?
I think y'all. So when I met Travarus, I was like, he different. Like I don't. You know how when you meet people at work and you like, I don't
most of the time.
Yeah, you be like, I don't know if I can trust you. But Travarus was always just telling the unadulterated truth, and that the genuineness of you is something that I really value in people.
Thank you.
So when you started talking and when we would be in meetings and stuff and people would ask questions and everybody else was like, Travarus would be like, I got something to say. And it was never like just something to say because it was something to say.
Right.
It was always something good. And it was always something that I personally had never thought of. And I think you're very good at bringing a new perspective to things. And so when I saw that, I was like, I need to make sure that I stay tapped in with him. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I just need to make sure that we stay connected.
Right.
So, I think, I went off after my internship, came back. And the first person I hit, I think one of the first persons I hit, I was like, Travarus, what's up? Like, how you been doing? After that, it was just always in the back of my mind that I needed to stay connected with you. And so after we just have had so many amazing conversations. And I think to that point, we realized that it was something that is fruitful and beneficial for other people, which is the origin of how we ended up here today.
And it makes you feel like the conversations that we had were like, let me point this to you all. Have you ever had conversations with someone and you're like, I wish this was recorded? And
Yes.
it was consistently moments like that. Now, Taylor gave me a little bit of flowers. I want to make sure I give her hers as well. I think Taylor is a superstar, despite being a Gen Zer and not having much experience. She's done so much in her career and has a lot of respect within the building that we work in. And working with her now on a one-on-one basis, I really admire the way that you show up each and every week, because this stuff is not easy. To have a 9 to 5, to have a work-life balance, to dedicate time to your friends. Also, you're a transplant. You live in the D.C. area, but that's not where you're from. A lot of those things have to do with perseverance, vision. And we're not going to talk about her 1 million LinkedIn
It's not
subscribers.
1 million, y'all. But if y'all do want to follow me on LinkedIn, it is Taylor Falls.
Or your 19,000 internships that you've had.
Travarus, you say this every day. And
But it's
every day I
facts.
tell you, it was not that many.
It's facts.
And it was, anyway, okay. Thank you.
I think overall what we want to really tap into is, I think the intention for us was being black in tech, right? But I think if you're in a corporate space, if you work in banking, if you work in finance, or you work in any of these big buildings between San Francisco and New York, you understand a lot of the things that we're going to chat about.
For
and let's first start by talking about what happens when you get in the building and you realize, where are the rest of me's? There's no more me's.
Of me's.
Yeah.
You know, that is a good point. And I'm going to hit y'all with some stats. So in tech, the percentage of black people, 7 to 8%. 7 to 8%. So,
Sad, but believable.
So, and that's the average. So, you know, some places have more or less.
Right.
And to that point, I think for me, when I think about it, it's always, I walk in and I think, okay, I don't see a lot of me. So what can I do to bring more of me?
Right.
Because when you come from, I went to a PWI. I grew up in Alabama.
I've been waiting for you to say it. Alabama.
Roll Tide, y'all. Anyway, they're not doing too well right now. But anyway, I went to a PWI, so I am familiar with walking in a classroom and it being really for real, like only one of me. Like seriously, that's not even a joke. So when I got to tech, it wasn't really a surprise, or it wasn't really something that I had not experienced. But my whole thing was, okay, you've lived this basically your entire life.
Right.
You're an adult. What are you going to do to change it?
Right.
And so that has always been my thing when I think about it. And I've heard that from a lot of other people working in tech. It's just like, you know, you go to lunch and you look around and it's only like 2 or 3 of you and everybody making eye contact like, oh, it's another one.
Yeah. And the thing that makes me upset is when you get into those spaces, you may consider 2 things. A, how did I get here? Which may make you feel a bit insecure because it's not many of you there.
True.
But also, W.B. Du Bois had this thing called dual consciousness, which means that to be black, you have to look through the eyes of yourself, but also the oppressor. So sometimes you walk into the space and you're thinking, how are they looking at me? Right? And that's a heavy burden to bear when you walk into space where other people can just show up and be themselves, right?
Right.
And it takes a while for that to wear off of you because you have to.
Does it ever?
It does.
Does it?
It does. I think so because it's something about showing up every day and doing your job at a high level, right? Because as we all know, a lot of folks who show up to these spaces are mediocre. They didn't have to work as hard as we had to in order to get here. And when you put your best foot forward and you get the feedback that you're killing it, that builds your confidence over time. Do you ever feel too comfortable? No. You never get too comfortable, but that doesn't mean that you can't feel like you belong.
You know, you say that, but then I talk to other people and they do not feel that way.
Well, maybe that's a personal perspective.
I think that's you, and like you are just so high performing and people just naturally like you. Because when I've talked to other people in tech who are, again, there's only 1 or 2 of them on their team, and I'm like, okay, you hit your metrics and more.
Right.
You have gotten what you need to get, and they're still like, I still cannot trust these people, I still feel like I don't belong.
That's a, you know what? Let's also take a very nuanced perspective.
Okay.
I've had great managers.
You're lucky.
I've had great.
A lot of people cannot say that.
I've had great managers, and the ones that I haven't, when I had managers that I didn't get along with, it's only one that I just despised. But I've always been able to have conversations with folks about what I want out of this deal.
Okay.
Right? Now, for those who know me, this isn't a surprise, but being in tech is my third career. I went from mental health to education to the tech space. So by the time I got to tech, I was a bit more seasoned in knowing how to navigate. And also there's way more autonomy. I've worked in places like education where if you needed to leave early, you had to sneak out.
Right.
Right? That's not favorable. So when I got to tech, it was more like, oh, y'all don't have a set time for me to come into the office. I can come in at 9:35, 10 o'clock. I knew how to work around that. So I was able to communicate to my managers of what I want. It wasn't a directive. It was a conversation. But I may be fortunate in that regard.
I think you are. I think
And
a
I'll
lot
take
of
that.
people would say that you are.
But I do think there is a way to have confidence while being the only.
Okay, talk about that then.
So speaking more about being high performing, I also think the work never speaks for itself.
No.
Solely, right?
No.
This is the lesson. The work alone never speaks for itself. What's required is the schmoozing, the conversations, the networking, right?
The
networking. And in networking, you might find some people who you may not have thought you would have gelled with may become like your work friend.
This is true.
Right? There's a difference between a real friend and a work friend. And I think you kind of, once you begin to build your network, you don't feel as isolated.
Okay, so I think this is true, but let's think about this. Let's take it from this perspective. Let's say you build your global company.
Yep.
You build your network with people who are on the West Coast.
Yep.
Because that's where most people
Headquarters,
are.
right.
Right. But you go back to your main office.
Yep. Nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got 4 hours to chat your folks to say how things going because they're 9 o'clock is your 12 o'clock.
Well, that's true.
Well, you got 5 hours, give or take lunchtime.
Yeah.
But for we can speak about the fact that we're in satellite offices. I work in New York City, work in DC. Neither one of them was our global headquarters. So with that said, it is isolating a bit to be in a satellite office. But this is now, we talked about this before, Taylor. For people who do not make work their entire lives, then you do what you have to do at work and then you find action elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right? That whole we're family. We're not family, bro. Like, there's no family in this corporation. And you do what you can to make sure that you stay connected and you are doing a good job. But there is no hesitation that they want to let you go. That's what's going to happen.
You're gone the next day.
Right?
They sending you an email.
So what I would say in terms of the networking connection, it won't be the same as if you were at headquarters and you can find more people who share your identity and your likes and things. But it's a bit better when you feel confident and you have at least someone to talk to.
This is true. I think we talked about this. We'll talk about this later. But how important it is to have that one true work friend.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It makes a difference, especially when you and that person share the same identity and they can relate to you.
Right.
It only takes one.
Right.
And that one goes a long way.
And I would say even for us, there was something that broke the ice. And I am naturally apprehensive, black folks are not, about people sharing intimate details about how I actually feel at work. Now,
you got to be careful.
You mentioned that I'm very honest when in these meetings.
True. Mm-hmm.
That is selectively, I was selectively sharing, right?
That was selective?
That was selective. I would try to read the room.
What's the real?
I would try to read the room based on what I feel people aren't saying. But also there's whispers outside of the big meeting where people are like, I wish we could say this. And I'm like, well, why can't we? Now, what I do is I have a sanitized way of saying it that's still going to hit home.
You're good at that. You should teach a course on that.
I got to figure out what the details are.
You good with that.
But with us, there was some issues that broke the ice. Where there was some egregious stuff going on, and you just like, yo, how'd you feel about that? And then one person goes a little bit further and further, and you just like, yeah, that's just some bullshit. That was.
Yeah.
Then you feel like, all right, we're building. Like now we have some space to chat. Also, something I said when I was a kid, which speaks to this, is if I ever had a teacher, if they ever cursed, I felt like they were cool. I don't know why that makes sense.
No, that's valid because
Right.
you know they trust you, because a teacher is not gonna curse in front of a student who
Right.
they know is gonna snitch.
All of a sudden, it feels like you're not bad.
Yeah,
You-
we can
you're-
be friends.
Right,
We kinda,
you're not bad.
Yeah.
So similar at work, when you find someone that you're like, they just let loose a little bit, and you know that it's a trusted space, you feel like, all right,
Yeah, like, yeah,
we can chat about things.
right. So Travarus, I want you to go back
Okay.
because you've been talking about, you know, your life and your work
Mhm.
in tech, but
Yep.
you haven't told us about what made you want to get into tech other than the money.
Mm-hmm.
Was it just the money?
No, this is a good question.
Okay.
I'll try to keep it. I don't want to be long-winded with this, but I moved to California, the Bay Area specifically, in 2015. From New Jersey, and I moved to the Bay in 2015. I was there for 8 years, but I moved there while working in education. So I worked at a school called UC Santa Cruz, and I worked at a school called San Jose State. San Jose State is right in Silicon
Wait,
Valley.
you worked at San Jose State?
I did.
You never said this.
My last role was director of the African American Student Success Center.
No,
Mm-hmm.
I did
Yep.
not know this.
Oh.
Okay, period. Love
Yeah,
it. Okay.
so when I was working in San Jose State, I was also going to grad school at the University of San Francisco. So I got with this group of other transplants who were not from the Bay that were working at Google, IBM, Facebook, yada, yada, yada. And I was in grad school, so I would chill with them sparingly. I would try to get up with them as much as I could, but it wasn't always as easy. So I began to show up for my work events, and there would be a happy hours and stuff, and I see them pulling up in something crazy, like a BMW here and a Range Rover
You like, how can I
here.
get that?
And I was like, confidence, right? I was like, all right. After seeing like 6 or 7 BMWs, you're like, how smart are they? Are they rocket scientists?
About
'Cause
to say, what y'all doing?
What they doing that I can't do?
What y'all doing to get
right?
this?
My superpower was that I was already in graduate school. So I began to figure out, is there a space for me and my skill set in tech? I found out quickly, yes, there is. Next, I decided to figure out how I can use what I was studying to crack the code and getting into tech. So what I did was I dedicated my master's thesis to study why black people leave Silicon Valley. Because if I can tell you while we're leaving, I can tell you how to keep us. And I have a skill set that you don't have. And I'm an expert while I'm interviewing, and you're intrigued, right?
Yeah, and I'm intrigued. Why were black people leaving?
It's
Silicon
run of the
Valley?
mill stuff. You don't see examples of people. Leadership is blowing smoke, but you also don't see other black leaders in the space, and you also don't have people to talk to.
Okay,
Hence
community.
The podcast,
Right.
right?
Here we are.
So, it took me a little bit of time, maybe like a year and a half from like the idea to my first day at Facebook, which is where I worked first as a contractor, and I can say that because I wasn't a full-time employee. But yep, it took me that amount of time. But the genesis of that idea was I would like to make more money I wanted to make more money based on how intelligent I knew that I was, but also it was a big challenge. And my friends, my homies thought it was an impossible task. They were like, I don't know how you're going to do it. Then when I did it, it was a big deal. And I've been trying to climb the ladder ever since.
Impressive.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out, man.
I mean, one day at a time. Me too.
I mean, but what made you decide to pursue this internship versus the other 19,000 that you had?
You need to. Anyway, so let's go back. Not as far back as you, but
obviously.
Sorry. I be having to crack on you a little bit. Okay, so let's go back to 2021.
Okay.
So,
whoa.
You know what? Okay. Anyways, y'all. So I at this time had not had an internship.
Okay.
Yes, I had not had one.
And what year are you?
I am. What am I? I'm a sophomore.
Okay.
Somewhere around this time. So I got my first internship working in the dining hall. Not serving the food, but
don't shame.
No, I'm not shaming. I'm just making. Okay, look. Not serving the food, but doing the marketing in the background.
Oh, okay.
So we used to have like activations and like late night parties and stuff in the dining hall. I did all of that. Not all of it. I did some of it.
Okay.
Let me not act like I did it all, because I didn't. I did some of that. So that was the marketing, social media marketing, TikToking, things of that sort. And I was like, this doesn't really fulfill my passion.
Okay.
This is 2021. So this is after George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. And everyone is starting to say these 3 letters, DEI. And I'm like, what is this? What are you people talking about?
Right.
So I ended up figuring out what it meant. And it turns out I had been doing it all my life. And I didn't know. So I had done a whole bunch of advocacy work. I started a group in high school with my friend around empowering Black women.
Okay.
I was on organizational boards in college around like Black students. So I'm like, this is my everyday life.
Right.
I'm like, y'all getting paid to do this?
Yep.
So then it took me to my first internship, which was kind of in like ed tech. What we call the ed tech industry. So kind of tech, but not really tech.
Not big tech.
Not big tech.
Right.
Tech-ish is what I'll call it. that one. And I was like, okay, they were like, come to the office, fly me out to New Jersey. Okay. And I was like, I'm gonna go for free? Y'all gonna pay for I was like, I like this. I enjoyed the perks.
Yeah.
Now, let me say, y'all, never thought to work in tech. Never, because I had never seen it. No one who I, at the time, knew personally had ever worked in tech.
Because Alabama.
Right. So I'm not thinking, let me go apply to Google. Let me go apply to Microsoft. Let me go. I never thought these things because I had never seen it.
Valid.
And I went to a big school with a lot of resources, but even then, that was not something that was common.
What is the common trajectory of someone who goes to like an SEC school, like the Georgias, the Clemsons, the Alabamas?
Normally, like when I think of people in business, I think Deloitte, or a lot of people go into real estate, or things like that. A lot of people work at Deloitte. But that real estate. A lot of people stay local and then they move, but no one who I know, other than 2 people from my school, work in big tech. So when I was at this ed tech job, I was like, I like these perks.
Right.
And so at the time, my best friend, Noelle, shout out to you. She's also my mentor. She ended up getting her internship where we work now.
Oh, that's your homie?
Yes, that's my homie.
Okay.
Yes. She ended up getting her internship and she put me on. And I tell people this all the time. And this is one thing I will say, point blank, period. Find a mentor. Yeah. Period. I did not realize that my best friend also was my mentor until she started giving me all the game. She's only a year older than me, but that extra year made a difference.
That's notable. I also didn't know that about you. That speaks a lot to humility, to have someone next to you that is also on their mission, and you A, ask questions, but B, you could stop and take a step back and like, I want to learn from my best friend. For sure. Right. Yeah. So I think that I want you to finish, but I wanted to highlight this point because when it comes to taking steps to achieve anything, you have to take unconventional routes, and sometimes it may be the person next to you that is doing the thing. Issa Rae talked about, I don't know what publication it was, but she said, I know
exactly what you're talking about.
She was like, why are you networking up? You should network sideways. Because if you are connecting the way you need to, then people on your team gonna be winning. So tap into the folks that are right next to you because they're on their way as well.
Exactly. And I love that point because you never know who's in your network horizontally who will go vertically. People are learning and growing and achieving stuff all the time. And that's why I make it a point also to, when I go places, I'm not only trying to meet the CEO or the CHRO because that's great and all. Yeah, right. But at the end of the day, them people have limited time and are most likely not going to be able to offer you the time and the resources that you need. Right. So my friend was there. She had already gone through it. So she was like, hey, do this, and that. I literally just did it. And also it's fresh. You know, when you're talking to someone who has done something 20 years ago.
20 years ago, they forget.
Times have changed. Like the way an internship went in 2000 is not the way an internship works today in 2024. Right. So when she was able to give me all the game, I was like, why have I never, this never even crossed my mind. Right. And so the way that we were able to kind of even think about getting into tech is that the company actually had a program on our campus.
Okay.
And it was like, use the software, do this. And she was a part of that program. And through the program, she got her internship. And so then after that, she put me on game. And then I took it and I ran. I mean, I was Sha'Carri Richardson with that with that internship. I took it and I ran with it. And that's what got me here. I truly, and I say this all the time, I truly never expected to be here. And it is because of my friend, period. I cannot take any type of credit for it. I mean, I did do the interview.
You had to do the work.
I had to do the work, but she opened the door. I just had to make sure the door stayed open.
Let me say this, and I want to get back to you keeping the door open because I think it's obvious for those who know you. But I worked at another tech company that is a bit smaller than the one that we work for, and I heard this quote, and they connect our cultures a lot. Like they say about that company and our company that like is comparable.
Okay.
The one quote that I heard was, "It is harder to get into Harvard than it is to work at this place." So I want to go back to you for you to say, anybody can have a friend that goes to a big school. That doesn't mean that they meet the criteria to get admitted. So
that's valid.
So for you to have to do and if you ever had a person that works in tech or you work in tech, it's like 5 interviews. They're checking and rechecking, and not only that, your friend can't do the work for you once you get in.
Okay.
So not only did you have to get in, achieve, and then they had to give you a callback for you to come back to want to have a full-time offer. And be clear, Taylor got her full-time offer when we were doing layoffs. Yeah. So that speaks to how special the company thought that she was and thinks that she is, because we were letting people go. And it was a decision like, well, we have this one intern coming in. Do we want to keep her? And it was like, it was a no-brainer. I was in those meetings, and it was just like, duh, right?
You were there?
Uh-huh.
Travarus, why you
I didn't have no say-so.
Well, okay, true.
And at that point, I didn't have no say-so. I was more or less just, because one of my interns, a person who was, I had just came back from having a daughter. So, those meetings were happening about like, what will we do?
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, so saying that, like, give shout out to your friend, but you did the work to get yourself to be here for sure.
And I tell people that it took a lot of work. I love being in this space, but it is not a space for the faint of heart.
No. But they say fast-paced environment, like
they're running. And it's not we're just doing a sprint. We're sprinting a marathon.
Yeah, yes. And there's something that we're going to talk about in a couple of episodes that I want to chat a little bit about right now, which is the culture, right? For me, I mentioned to you all that this is my third career. I went from mental health to education to now tech. And I will say in tech, it's very come as you are, not denominational church vibes, where it's like people going to be in flip-flops, going to be in sweatpants. Yeah. But those rules don't apply to all.
No.
And I want you to chat about what you've seen in terms of people coming how they are, but also who couldn't participate in that way.
Well, people do come as they are. I've seen all types of things. And this is across the board at other companies too. Yeah. Just like shorts, t-shirt.
Yeah.
Just your everyday, maybe I'm going to Walmart clothes.
Right.
Which I feel like there is no dress code, so do what you want to do. However, I think my dad tells me that people are always watching you.
Yes.
And I did not realize that until people started calling out things that I had worn or that I had done, not in a bad way, but just
they're noticing.
Right. Yeah. Like there was an admiration for something that I did not realize people knew that I was doing. I'm like, when did you see me do that?
Right.
I'm like, okay, I'm scared.
Right.
But to that point, that means everyone is being watched in one way or another by someone.
Yep.
And for people that look like you and I feel like if I came to work with some shorts and some flip-flops on, they looking at me side eye like crazy.
Right.
And I don't even think I would be comfortable enough to do that. You wouldn't.
You wouldn't.
No.
Because the amount of, it takes like a mountain of thoughts to even decide to be casual.
Right.
And how casual?
Some days I'd be like, should I wear jeans? And our culture is wear what you
Normal,
want.
right?
But even I think, this goes back to just professionalism and how society defines professionalism, especially as a Black woman.
Yeah.
And we think of things like our hair and all of these various things. And so some days I walk into my closet, I'm like, should I put on those jeans? Is this gonna be a weird look, or should I wear that dress? Is that doing too much? Like where do I draw the line?
Right. I get that, and I have a bit of a different perspective. This also speaks to the confidence, and also I'm a man, not a woman, so the expectations and the connotations that come with dressing different isn't the same. So in 2020, 2021, we were all virtual, and before that, when I went into the office, I was straight buttons on my shirt, boots, long peacoat, or some type of on a
Okay.
Going to San Francisco, it's a little brisk. You know what I mean?
It do be cold.
Yeah, it'd be cold, but very like professional, right? I didn't have to wear a suit, but I'm wearing buttons every day, really like tidy up. And then you mentioned Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. We having these moments, and I began to realize that people still have these connotations of how Black people show up. So I began to intentionally wear hoodies for meetings that I was leading with external stakeholders. Because one thing you can't deny is what's coming out of my mouth. You can try to deny what I have on. I'm wearing like a fitted, and I got a hoodie on, right? And then I began to make my own clothes, and I'm wearing my own stuff, so that became a dual purpose. But what I wanted to ensure is that you couldn't look at someone who had a hoodie, some jeans, and some sneakers, and just cast them off, because you've experienced me, someone who's showing up, talking the talk, and has a hoodie, some J's, and some jeans on, right? That's a very intentional choice that I made that I don't expect anybody else to make, because I think that I can intellectually back it up.
Right. And I think that is also, this is where I feel like that is very Gen Z of you to do so. This is why I say, like, you are not the average millennial, because a lot of people just would not even think or feel comfortable enough to do that.
Right.
But to the point of your intellect, that truly just showed, because I don't even think anyone would think to, like, the thought that you put in behind that.
Right.
No one would, the average person would not think that. And that's fire that you did that.
So
I love that.
This is not a flex, I promise.
It's just flex, Travarus.
No, it's not. It's not.
Somebody
way back in the
hit him with the flex.
way back in the day, I won homecoming king in college.
Of course you did.
Stop.
Of
Of
course.
The reason that I decided to run was because my girlfriend at the time, my ex-girlfriend now, clearly because I'm married, but she was, somebody wrote the N-word on her door.
Oh.
Yeah. And I began to have a realization that I went to a PWI as well, way smaller than where you went. A realization that maybe they see us like people have in like the 60s. They just think that we're here for sports and entertainment, right? So I wanted to infiltrate their space. The homecoming king thing is, we don't even have a football team. Don't judge.
Sorry.
But it was like a part of like the homecoming weekend. People come back and do all these things. It involves like a performance. It involves like school knowledge. It involves like a presentation.
For the homecoming king?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We had to do it was a lot, right? So I was like, I'm going to come in. All I wanted to do was show up to show y'all, like, we're here, we're going to compete, and I just don't want y'all to think that we're here for shits and giggles. I blew that whole thing out of the water.
I know you did.
And I didn't expect to, but everything that I did was 15 times better than what they did. I wanted to just infiltrate their space so they could recognize us as more than just athletes and other things. So that like subtle counterculture advocacy came through back then, but I was like, they're not about to just make us feel this way, right? So I began to recognize that sometimes I feel like I'm different than others, and I want to use that for good versus evil. Similar to if I see a young, like an older white woman that's reaching for something at the grocery store, I use my tallness to get that for her.
And that is so sweet.
You know what I mean? I just try to use things that I got for good,
right?
Versus evil. You know,
as you should.
Yeah, it's my civic duty.
I love that, Travarus.
Yeah, being tall and shit.
Being tall and black, your civic duty. It be like that. Gotta do it all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what are the things that you think folks will get out of listening to our podcast?
I think a few things. Number one, I hope y'all get a couple of laughs. This is not just us here talking about serious things. Well, a lot of these things are serious.
It can be.
We throw a little bit of a few jokes in here or there. And I
should.
think we're just both naturally funny.
Right.
So number one, some laughs. Number two, some resources.
Yes.
I know we both have our own segments, which we'll get to shortly. But when it comes to just the knowledge between you and I,
Yeah.
especially for, just different sets of the population, I think there will be resources here truly for everyone.
Right.
So definitely some resources. And then number three, I think a community.
Yes.
We talk about how there are 7% of black people in tech. And then there are, 14% of black people in America. So we're already just naturally small in numbers. And we talk about, you go into a place and I don't see anyone that looks like me, let alone in a leadership role.
Right.
How do I navigate that? And I think we can give people a lot of tidbits and a lot of answers, or just even something to think about, to consider when it comes to navigating that. And then I think the last thing is we can inspire people to show up authentically.
Yes.
You and I are on this podcast and we're being genuine. We're being very genuine. I hope people don't think we're being too genuine. I'm like, we being genuine, y'all.
For y'all.
For y'all. So look, I hope yes. So in our authenticity, I hope that it inspires others, whether they are Gen Z or millennials or baby boomers, whatever the case, whoever is listening, I hope that it inspires them to show up as their authentic self. Because that can be hard. I mean, I believe in being genuine, and even some days I'm like, okay, where do I limit who I am when I come into this space?
Right.
So I those 4 things I would say.
That was great.
Thank you.
I think those are solid things. I know this podcast is for people who are ambitious.
For sure.
If you don't meet, we're not specifically targeting black people, but we are black people, so we have an understanding of the things that we want to hear. We don't speak for all black folks, specifically all black folks in tech, because we work in a non-technical aspect of the tech space. We want to make sure we're very clear.
We should definitely say that. Yes.
Very clear.
I do not know how to code, y'all. Please do not ask me right now.
Right. And when she say resources, that does not mean you can ask us for a job. We're not there yet.
No. But maybe one day.
We're going to be close, but we're not there yet. Right? Like, you like the cousin that, like, I just met. We're like, we're going to kick it. We're going to hit the bar.
Yeah.
But, like, you can't ask me for money yet.
Right. You got to wait a couple years.
Just give it a little bit of time.
Let it marinate.
Right? For you gotta ensure that I got it. I might look like I got it, but I might not really got it.
Valid.
You know what I mean?
Valid.
This is for people who are ambitious. Wherever you come from, I think that you will be able to relate to the ambition of trying to aspire to be better than your parents or better than what you came as, right? This podcast is also for people who are trying to figure it out.
Yes. And we don't have it figured out.
Don't.
Also, let's say that.
We don't.
No.
And I think that it is great because we are coming from a perspective of, I have been working for 13, 14 years. Taylor's been working for what, 2?
Yeah. Well,
but
yeah.
But you have a wealth of knowledge for professionally, right?
Professionally working 3 years.
Right. Okay. So we have different perspectives that often meet in the middle.
Right.
But we can share our different mindsets of how we got there. Like showing your work in math class, right? We might get the same answer, but how did you...
Different methodologies.
I need to show your work, bro.
Yeah.
Like, so this podcast is also for people who need to learn how to be empathetic.
Okay, tell us more about that.
Because everybody that works in these spaces, sometimes y'all are privileged.
Yeah,
and y'all also didn't work as hard to get here as other people.
Yeah, that's
so you need to know how to take the long way, what it took to get here, but also be empathetic to the folks who are on your team that you may not have talked to, right?
You never know what they're going through.
And you hear the people say, all skin folk and kinfolk, right?
Dang.
This podcast is not for those folks. It ain't for y'all, right? So what we overall want you to get from this podcast is information. We want you to get some entertainment, and we really want you to be able to key in and see yourselves in us. right? I've been in spaces, like I mentioned, I moved to California, was in these big old offices, didn't know a soul. Um, Sitting by yourself having lunch, right? And trying to break the ice, trying to talk to people and figure out who are your folks. Also, just trying to inspire people who are behind you, like you mentioned, which is trying to leave things better than you got it.
Right.
Because I wanted to highlight the work that you do on LinkedIn that is for you to be not that far from college. A lot of your content is driven towards helping people get internships. So I want you to talk, not your tips yet, but I want you to talk about like what makes you decide to want to give back in that way.
So I mentioned that I went to a PWI.
Right.
My school was actually quite large.
Mm-hmm.
And we had so many various centers for this and stuff for that and what were supposed to be resources. And I felt like I still missed out on a lot of stuff because I'm thinking I'm supposed to go to the career center and do this and do that. But the career center doesn't necessarily have all the resources that I need,
Right.
or that it should have. And I realized that I missed out on a lot of opportunities, or I got opportunities later down the line when it was almost too late that I should have gotten earlier. So I started asking myself, like, what's going on here? Like, where was the gap?
Right.
And it's just that the university did not provide certain things that underrepresented students needed.
Right.
So when everybody started asking me, like, how did you get your internship? How did you do this? How did you do that? And I started providing people with internships and stuff at school. So I would make what I do now on LinkedIn, I was doing it at school already, just in a smaller scale.
Got it.
So I would ask my line sisters, I would be like, okay, what type of internship do you need? I would compile lists for them, like one by one, like every specific person
That's incredible.
would get their own list. Or like every week I would send out a professional development tip.
Right.
And so I was like, wait a minute. I'm graduated now. I was doing this for a whole year and some change, like this specific type of professional development thing. Let me take it and give it to the masses, because obviously it helped people,
Right.
and I believe in extending the ladder back down. So I'm like, let me just put it out there, and people ate it up.
It worked.
And I did not expect it to be such a want and a need, but again, to the point that I was talking about in the beginning, it made sense because so many students go to universities much smaller than mine.
Right.
And I know that if my university had gaps in the resources that they were providing, then a student that goes to a college that maybe has like 10,000 people or 5,000 people, there are most definitely gaps that are probably larger. And that's where I come in to fill them in.
That's amazing. I think this is a good segue for you to get into what you do. So we will be having segments in each episode. Taylor will be giving you tips with Taylor, and I'll be giving you concise advice. These are things that we were doing independently that we want to bring to the podcast. So without further ado, can we have the first of many tips with Taylor?
Tips with Taylor. So when I talk about filling in the gaps, one thing that is important, in my opinion, is professional development in general across the board. And I think a lot of students want professional development, but they don't know where to get it. So lucky for y'all, I have a list.
Okay.
And when I talk about professional development, I'm talking about learning how to network, your resume. How do you get into these big tech companies? Right. Because again, for the average student, for the average person in general, it's highly difficult to get an internship in big tech. But there are programs and organizations that help you do these things. So I have a little list here. So this is for my Black and underrepresented students. So MLT, rewriting the code. NSBE for my Black engineers. Inroads, SEO, Year Up, and Code 2040. This is for Code 2040 is for those interested in software development. So I definitely recommend that you all look into these organizations, potentially join them. Normally they have cohorts that begin in the fall or the spring. So if you are in need of professional development, definitely look into applying for these. Now, let's get into some concise advice, Travarus. This is my favorite segment because I always love to hear what you have to say when we have questions from various people and from our audience. So, Travarus, how and why are you able to move with confidence in and outside of the workplace? How important is confidence for you?
I think you've all seen, or at least if you're listening to the podcast at this point, you understand that confidence is a big part of. It's a big part of the secret that allows, I think, for me to be successful. But it wasn't always that way. My first love was basketball, and I still play ball to this day, but not just for cardio, right? And one thing that you'll recognize is the more work you put in, the better you get. And it's cliche, right? But when you practice and practice and practice, when you go to another place and you're supposed to perform, you feel like you are better equipped to do the job because I've been here before. I practiced this shot a million times. Also, if you don't do well, you have confidence that the next time will go better because you put the work in.
Right.
So I attribute this to like all of life. And when you get into a space of work, a 9 to 5, it's really easy for them to make you feel less than confident. Very easy for you to feel like, you know what? I don't know if this is the place that can enrich me or build me up. And you gotta outsource that. You have to do that on your own. You really have to make sure that you are putting the work in and that you can feel like you are not being bogged down by their standards or perspectives, and you really have to hone in. And the only thing that you can do is to rely on yourself. As the kids say, bet on yourself these days.
Bet on
So
yourself.
the reasons why confidence is so important is because it is your lifeline. People can see it when you go into a room, and when you leave, they can feel like something about that person, right?
That's true.
And it saves you a lot of headaches. And I say that to say, when I've been my most confident, I wasn't faking it until I made it. I truly knew it. And if that person decided that that wasn't the right job for me, it wasn't the right environment, I didn't feel bad. It saved me like was I good enough, or should I have done this? It's like, nah, I prepared. If I prepared and it didn't go my way, that was God saying
it's not meant for you.
It wasn't meant for me
At this time. Yeah.
So my confidence has always allowed me to feel very comfortable with the decisions that I make and the decisions that are made for me. But also on a micro scale, sometimes you're just not having a great day, right? And there's somebody who is trying to take your energy from you. And if you don't have confidence, that person will steal that from you. And you cannot allow anyone, specifically us, to take anything that you worked very hard for from you. So confidence is supremely important, and I think you get it from various sources. You can get it from friends. You can get it from external factors and things that people tell you that you're good at, but it starts with you being good, with preparing your ass off and being really solid on the things that you do each and every day to be better, and you will always be better off betting on yourself in that regard.
So everyone, bet on yourself.
Bet on yourself. So this was great.
I agree.
I think this was a solid first episode. Do you think that we elaborated on how we got here and what it's like to be a black tech professional thus far?
Yes, I think that we did. And one of the takeaways that I got from this is that I need to bet $100K on myself going forward. I mean, if you would say bet on yourself, hopefully I win. But I do think we did a fantastic job of elaborating today and sharing our true, authentic stories.
We would love to hear from you all. So if you are listening to this on YouTube, please let us know in the comments. If you are listening to this clip on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, let us know how y'all feel, because we want to continue to interact with you. And Taylor mentioned building a community. We want to build with you all, so we cannot wait for you to check us out weekly, wherever you get podcasts. And until next time.
Until next time, y'all.